Hey there YouTube, I've just finished watching the latest episode of the new Doctor Who, Victory of the Daleks, written by Mark Gatiss, always a good thing, featuring the Daleks, also always a good thing, usually. That is. I had high hopes for this episode. The last episode was a shitfest for a number of reasons. It was very, very, very bad and I was disappointed in it. But there's always at least one episode in all of the seasons of Doctor Who that isn't up to scratch. It isn't up to the standard. That's fine. I was hoping that the last episode was that episode, the sort of the token crap episode. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case if this episode is anything to go by. As I say, Mark Gatiss's writing for television is usually sublime. The man has a wonderful gothic sensibility, very a storyteller's knack for hitting beats, by which I mean the rhythm of the stories that Mark Gatiss writes are always very well conceived. You get excellent moments of dread, of suspense, of comedy, and of drama, all coming through at the right time and in the right order, and so on and so forth. This one, if I didn't know any better, I'd say it wasn't even written by Gatiss. It doesn't hit the beats. It doesn't have the beats. It doesn't have the tempo or the rhythm. The whole setting, the World War II setting, was completely incidental. It could have occurred. This story could have occurred anywhere, at any time. It seemed that the only reason they did it is so they could have the novelty of having the Doctor and Winston Churchill in the same episode. And speaking of Winston Churchill, although I usually like the actor who plays him, his portrayal of Churchill in this was diabolical. Not that I expect realism or anything like that. It was just a bad performance. It was just him going blah, 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 all the time. I'm talking like that all the time. That was his basic performance of Winston Churchill, wibbly wobbling about. It was shocking. And barring that, there wasn't really anything much to distinguish the World War II setting. It all seemed rather cartoonish and superficial. I didn't buy it for a second. Also, there was a great deal of a very palpable Deus Ex Machina in this episode, by which I mean you can feel the writing. There's a lot of narrative convenience. You can feel the writer scrabbling about, trying to get the characters out of this situation and into this situation, and so the transition was very badly handled. There's a point where they need to get. They need to have a situation where they can have a dogfight in space with a big Dalek ship, and they just, in the space of a transition between one scene and another, they just invent these Spitfires that can go into space. Oh, and funnily enough, not only are they Spitfires that can go into space, the pilots can pilot them in space, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I mean, I don't mind that sort of thing in a Doctor Who episode. Usually, you can get away with it because it is a sort of science fiction, sci-fantasy thing. But there are ways and means of doing these things so that they feel legitimate. There's a way of achieving verisimilitude by even when what you're portraying is not realistic. There's a way of doing it, and Doctor Who is usually very good at doing that, of explaining the wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, which is what David Tennant's Doctor referred to it as. This didn't even bother. It just put Spitfires in space. Didn't even bother to explain it properly. Just put Spitfires in space, and then you had a really terrible Independence Day rip-off. And if you're going to rip off a film, don't rip off a shit one like Independence Day, quite frankly. This is something that Doctor Who has been guilty of before, I will admit. Obviously there are science fiction homages and references in Doctor Who, but sometimes there are blatant rip-offs. And this is one of them. The Daleks were deeply, deeply unthreatening in this episode. Despite there being this new generation of Daleks that were supposedly deadlier and more powerful than all the others, they were fooled by the Doctor wielding what was evidently a Jammie Dodger. And there was some very bad direction at this point as well. What the directors didn't seem to realise is that if we the audience viewing the Doctor from the Daleks' perspective through a TV can realise that it's a Jammie Dodger and not a self-destruct mechanism for the TARDIS, then the Daleks, with all of their sophisticated scanning equipment and whatnot, would definitely be able to tell that it's a Jammie Dodger, or rather that it isn't anything threatening. It was very badly, it was a joke that went awry, it didn't work, it fell completely flat. And as for the new Daleks, they look awful. Awful. They've extended the carapace of the Daleks for some reason, which I thought was going to have some function. When the original Daleks said that they were creating new Daleks from Dalek DNA and whatnot, I thought that was going to split open and you were going to have new Dalek life forms, the interior life forms inside, which would have been cool. But that wasn't it. They just had big carapaces and they looked like wheelie bins. It was very bad. And why did they paint them different colours? Why did they paint them different colours? I would have liked to have seen them all, either all like the first one, all white or all black, or maybe lots of black ones with a white one leading them, or lots of white ones with a black one leading them, or a gold one or whatever. Fine, that would have been great, but no, the various colours is stupid. It makes them look like they've had a fight in a Dulux factory, or like they've been constructed out of Lego. Either that, or they're featuring in a Skittles advert. No, it wasn't good. I didn't buy any of the episode, that's the thing. I didn't get it, I didn't get caught up in it. All of the Tennant episodes, even the bad ones, I got intrigued by something. It's not, as I say, I want to make this clear, it is not the Doctor, it's not Matt Smith. I like Matt Smith a lot, I think he's a very credible Doctor indeed. And it's not the companion or anything like that, it's the writing and general production. Something very different is going on here. It's evident that it doesn't have as big a budget as it used to, and it's really palpable. Usually that isn't a problem, you can get around that with good writing and good acting and whatnot, but it doesn't. The scripts aren't sharp enough to get around it. And the writing was terrible. It's the writing more than anything for me that really, really got me. And that's a shame. I like Mark Gatiss a lot. I really do like Mark Gatiss. He's a great, great writer for TV. But this was unworthy of him. It really was. Whether it was massacred in terms of the editing process or by direction, I just don't know. But I'm having grave doubts now. It was something I feared about Moffat's run as the head writer as Doctor Who, but I am having grave doubts about the rest of the series. I really, really hope the quality of the writing picks up.